It was late in the evening when the phone rang. She had just finished tucking her children into bed and was settling into the quiet of her modest apartment. The sudden sound of her ringtone broke the silence. She glanced at the screen, an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail but decided to answer it. "Hello?" she said, her voice tired but polite. "Is this the woman from the ad?" came the deep, unfamiliar voice on the other end. She paused, confused. "What ad? Who is this?" "I am a billionaire. I need your help. I saw your resume, and you're exactly who I need. Can you come to my estate tonight?" Her heart skipped a beat. She had no idea how someone could have gotten her information, but the voice was commanding and confident. There was no time to waste. She felt a strange pull to listen, though every instinct in her told her to hang up. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are." "My name isn't important," he interrupted. "I need someone to care for me, and I need you. No one else. You'll be well compensated, of course. Just trust me, I need you to be here as soon as possible." She hesitated, trying to understand what he meant. A part of her felt like something was off. There was a coldness in his tone that made her skin crawl. But the offer was impossible to ignore. A billionaire? Offering a job out of nowhere? The idea of a new life, free from constant financial struggles, stirred something deep within her. "I can't just leave without knowing more. What's this about? What do you need me for?" she asked, the curiosity rising inside her despite her reservations. "I was hurt, badly. I need someone to tend to my wounds." "But that's not all," he replied, his voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "I have things that need attention. Things only you can help with." She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, but the words lingered in the air, full of mystery. "I'll pay for your time, your skills, and your loyalty." His tone softened as if to coax her into agreeing. She thought of her children, of their future, of the chance this could be for her family. The hesitation lasted only a moment longer. "All right," she said, trying to keep the uncertainty from her voice. "I'll be there." "Good. I'll text you the address. You won't regret this." And with that, the call ended. She stood there for a moment, staring at her phone, unsure of what had just happened. Her mind raced. How did a billionaire know about her? What was this strange request? She shook off the feeling that something was wrong, but her curiosity was too strong. Little did she know, this call was just the beginning of a chain of events that would change her life forever. The answers she would soon uncover would leave her questioning everything she thought she knew about trust, loyalty, and the price of a second chance. She grabbed her jacket and headed out the door, the dark night swallowing her up as she made her way to a mansion she never imagined she'd enter. The drive to the mansion was longer than she expected, the road winding and dark, the silence in the car almost suffocating. Her mind was filled with questions. What had she gotten herself into? Why had this billionaire, a complete stranger, called her out of the blue? What was so special about her? As she approached the massive gates, she felt a strange sense of unease. The mansion loomed in the distance, surrounded by tall, iron gates, and its grandiose design seemed almost intimidating. It felt like something out of a movie, a world so far removed from the small, humble life she knew. But this was real. This was happening. The gates opened automatically as her car approached, and she followed the winding driveway up to the mansion's entrance. When she arrived, a tall man in a suit greeted her. He didn't say much, just a curt nod and a gesture to follow him inside. "Mr. Smith is expecting you," the man said, his tone impassive. Inside the mansion, the air was cool, and the interior was more extravagant than she had imagined, golden chandeliers, marble floors, and enormous paintings on the walls. It was hard to believe that someone, especially a man she had never met, could live in such a place. It felt like a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The man led her down a long hallway to a door at the end. When he knocked, a low voice from inside called, "Enter." She pushed the door open, her heart racing. Inside, the billionaire sat in a large, ornate armchair. His once perfect appearance was now marred by bandages wrapped around his chest and arms, his face pale from the obvious pain. He looked different than she expected, broken, vulnerable. "Ah, you're here," he said, his voice smooth but weak. His eyes scanned her quickly, taking her in as if assessing whether she was the right choice. "Please, come in. Sit." She stepped forward hesitantly, unsure what to say or do. "I'm sorry about the conditions. I didn't mean to scare you with the rush. But I'm in no condition to wait much longer," he continued, his tone slightly softer now. "I needed someone who could come immediately, someone I could trust." "Trust?" she repeated, puzzled. "You don't even know me." He leaned back slightly, his expression shifting to something unreadable. "I know more than you think," he said cryptically. "You were recommended. Your skills, your background, your willingness to help. I chose you for a reason." Her curiosity deepened. "And what exactly do you need from me?" He paused for a moment, then motioned for her to sit. "More than just physical care. What I really need is someone who can understand me. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions." Her eyes narrowed, the hairs on the back of her neck rising. There was something in his words that made her feel uneasy, something she couldn't quite place. But the money, the opportunity, it was all too tempting. She pushed her doubts aside and nodded. "Okay. What do you want me to do?" He smiled faintly, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "First, I need you to take care of my wounds. Then, I'll tell you more. But for now, just keep me company." His voice was gentle, almost pleading. She agreed reluctantly, moving closer to him to assess the injuries. As she cleaned his wounds and applied the ointment, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. More that he wasn't saying. She had to wonder, why her? What was the real reason he chose a single mom, living in a small apartment, to care for a man like him? Something was off, but her instincts told her to stay. The mysterious billionaire had his secrets, and she wasn't sure she was ready to uncover them just yet, but she would. The following days passed slowly, the mansion feeling both like a prison and a strange escape. As she cared for the billionaire, she noticed more peculiarities. The house was enormous, yet eerily quiet, and despite the grandeur, everything felt cold, like a place that had been abandoned by warmth and life. He seemed to grow weaker with each passing day, but his mind was sharp. He asked her questions about her life, about her children, her struggles, but never seemed to offer much of himself in return. The only thing he ever spoke about in detail was his accident, which he claimed had been a result of a random mugging. She didn't press for more details. There was something unsettling in the way he described it, like he was hiding the truth behind layers of half-truths. It was during one of their late-night conversations that the first strange request came. "You've been here for several days now," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have another task for you." She looked up from where she was sitting, knitting the edges of a blanket for her children. She had grown used to his odd ways but still wasn't sure how to handle them. "What is it?" she asked cautiously, already bracing herself for something strange. "I need you to go into town for me," he said, his eyes fixing on her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "There's a small antique shop on Main Street. I need you to bring back something from there." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, as though debating how much to reveal. "A book. It will be wrapped in a thick brown cover. The shopkeeper will know it when he sees you." It sounded odd, even by his standards. She had thought caring for him would involve simple things, wounds, bandages, maybe some cleaning. But now he was asking her to go to a strange shop, retrieve an even stranger item. The whole situation felt off, but she didn't know how to argue with him. He was paying her well, after all, and she needed the money. "And what's so important about this book?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the suspicion creeping into her voice. His gaze shifted, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something flicker in his eyes: fear. It was quick, barely perceptible, but it was enough to send a shiver down her spine. "I can't tell you," he said softly. "But please, trust me. Bring it back to me. It's crucial." The urgency in his voice was palpable. She could see the weight of something he wasn't saying pressing down on him. She wasn't sure if she was more frightened of the task or of the man who was asking her to do it. But there was something in his demeanor that made her pause. The fear in his eyes told her that whatever was in that book had more power than she could ever imagine. "All right," she said, standing up. "I'll do it." He smiled faintly, but there was a coldness to it, as though he didn't entirely trust her. "Good. I'll be waiting for you." The drive to town felt longer than usual, the streets deserted in the dead of night, the soft hum of her car's engine the only sound she could hear. She kept replaying the conversation in her head, trying to make sense of it all. A book? And the strange urgency behind his request? Was it really just an ordinary book, or was there something else she wasn't being told? When she arrived at the antique shop, it was even stranger than she expected. The shop was tucked away in an alley, the window covered in dust, and the door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of old leather and paper, the shelves filled with trinkets and curiosities. She could feel the weight of the place pressing in on her as she scanned the room. A man stood behind the counter, his eyes immediately locking onto hers when she walked in. He didn't smile or greet her, but there was an unmistakable recognition in his gaze. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. She hesitated, then nodded. "I was told to come for a book." "A wrapped book?" "I was told you'd know what I'm talking about." The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Without saying a word, he turned and walked into the back of the shop. She stood there, heart pounding, wondering what she had gotten herself into. Moments later, he returned with a small, thickly wrapped parcel. It was heavy in her hands, and she could feel the strange energy radiating from it. He didn't say a word as he handed it to her. She paid him with the cash the billionaire had given her, and as she turned to leave, the man spoke one last time. "Be careful with that book," he warned, his voice barely audible. "It has more power than you realize." His words echoed in her ears as she made her way back to the car, the book heavy in her arms. What was in it? And why was it so important? The question lingered, unanswered, as she made her way back to the mansion. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just about tending to wounds anymore. The billionaire had drawn her into a world of secrets, and she had no idea what she was about to uncover. When she returned to the mansion, the moonlight was weak and pale, barely casting any light on the mansion's sprawling grounds. She walked through the front door, the book clutched tightly in her hands. Her mind buzzed with questions, her heart thumping in her chest. She had been a part of something now, something deeper than just taking care of a man. The man who had once been a stranger had pulled her into a web of secrets, and she couldn't escape. She was greeted by the same butler-like figure who had led her inside the first time. He didn't ask her questions or offer assistance, he just stepped aside and allowed her to pass. It was as though the house was an entity unto itself, operating without explanation. When she entered the room where the billionaire sat, he was waiting for her. His body, still battered and bruised from whatever had happened, had grown paler over the past few days. But his eyes, they burned with something more. A strange fire that hadn't been there when she first arrived. "You've got it," he said, his voice nearly a whisper, yet it commanded attention. She nodded, placing the book gently on the table in front of him. Her hands trembled, though she couldn't pinpoint why. She watched as he slowly, carefully unwrapped it. The book was old, its cover dark and faded, but there was something strange about it. It looked almost ancient, as if it had been around for centuries. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched him run his fingers over the cover, almost reverently. "You don't understand what this is, do you?" he asked, his voice tinged with both excitement and dread. She shook her head. "No. I don't understand anything anymore." He laughed softly, a dry, brittle sound. "I figured as much. But I didn't expect you to. It's not your fault, really. I've spent years keeping it hidden. Keeping it locked away, in the hopes that no one would find it. But now..." He trailed off, his eyes fixing on her, intense and searching. "Now," he continued after a moment, "I need your help to unlock its secrets." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. She didn't know what kind of secrets he was referring to, but everything inside her screamed that they were not normal secrets. He carefully opened the book. The pages were filled with symbols and strange markings, ones she couldn't even begin to understand. It looked more like a code than anything resembling a language she knew. "I'm not the man I appear to be," he said quietly. "What you see now, the billionaire, the mansion, the fortune, none of it is real. At least, not in the way you think. I've lived many lives, in many different ways. I've been running from something for years." She stood there, frozen, her mind reeling. Everything she thought she knew about him, the simple story of a man who had hired her for a job, was crumbling before her eyes. "Running from what?" she whispered, barely able to speak. He looked at her then, really looked at her, his gaze deep and full of untold stories. "The past. A past that has followed me for decades. And this book, it's the key to understanding it all." He paused, taking a long breath. "But it's also what's been hunting me. What's been hunting us both." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, us both?" "I didn't." He raised his hand to silence her. "You didn't ask for this. You were just doing your job. But now you're involved, whether you want to be or not." His eyes seemed to darken, a shadow passing over them. "This book holds a power that can change everything. It can unlock secrets, but it can also destroy. And now that you've touched it, you can never turn back." She felt the weight of his words in her chest, as though the room itself was closing in around her. She had been foolish to think this would be just a simple job. The billionaire's pain, his strange requests, they were all part of a much larger story, one that she had no business being part of. But she was already too deep. There was no turning back now. The billionaire continued, his voice low and urgent. "They've been looking for it. Looking for me. For years, I've hidden from them. But now, they know where I am. They know what you have." Her blood ran cold. "Who are they?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at the book, running his fingers over its pages like it was a lifeline. "The ones who were responsible for my fall. The ones who gave me these wounds. They've been after me for too long. And now, they're after you." Her mind spun, trying to keep up with the gravity of the situation. "What do we do now?" He looked up at her, and for the first time, there was a look of sincerity in his eyes, an expression that seemed almost human, stripped of all the wealth and power he had built around himself. "We fight. Together." The words rang in her ears as she sat there, unsure of what to do next. She had come to care for this man, despite the strange and unnerving circumstances. But now, she realized, she was in deeper than she could ever have imagined. Whatever was coming next, she could no longer turn back. The truth was unfolding before her, and she had to decide where she stood in it all. The book, the billionaire, the past, it all led to one undeniable truth. There were forces far greater than either of them at work now. And they were coming. The air in the mansion felt heavier after the billionaire's revelation. The walls seemed to close in around her, and the grand halls that once seemed welcoming now felt like traps. She sat across from him, her hands trembling, unsure of what to believe or even what to do next. The fear in his eyes was palpable, and it mirrored the rising panic within her. She tried to push the flood of emotions aside. This wasn't what she had signed up for. She had been hired to care for an injured man, nothing more. But now, everything had changed. The book in front of them wasn't just some ancient artifact, it was a weapon, a key to a past that she couldn't possibly understand, and she was tangled in it whether she liked it or not. "How do we fight them?" she asked, her voice low, shaky. "Who are they? And why are they after us?" The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant as he stared at the book, his fingers still lightly tracing the ancient symbols. "They are called the Consortium," he said, his voice filled with disdain. "A powerful group who controls everything from the shadows, politics, business, even technology. They've been around for centuries, pulling the strings behind every major event in history. And they've been after me for just as long." Her stomach churned. "But why you? Why not someone else?" He turned to her, his eyes sharp, but there was a deep sadness in them. "Because I have something they need. This book, it's not just a collection of ancient writings. It's a map, one that leads to something far more powerful than they can imagine. A power that could change the world. And I'm the only one who knows how to unlock it." Her head spun as she tried to process his words. "And they'll stop at nothing to get it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Exactly," he replied. "They've been hunting me for years, trying to break me, trying to get their hands on the book. But I've managed to stay one step ahead. Until now." His voice faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. "And now that you've brought the book back, they know where I am. And they'll come for you too. You're in danger now, whether you want to be or not." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "What do we do now? How can I help you?" He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate as he crossed the room to a large, ornate cabinet. He opened it to reveal a hidden compartment, from which he retrieved a small, gleaming device. It looked like a futuristic key, sleek and metallic, with intricate designs engraved into its surface. He held it out to her, his gaze intense. "This is the key to unlocking the book's full power," he said. "I can't do this alone. I need you to help me." She looked at the device in his hand, then back at him, confusion flooding her mind. "What do you mean? How am I supposed to help? I'm just a single mom from a small town. I don't know anything about this." He smiled, but it was a bitter smile. "Neither did I. But sometimes, fate chooses us, whether we're ready or not. You've already taken the first step, simply by being here. Now, you have to trust me. This is bigger than both of us." Her mind raced. She didn't know if she could trust him completely. After all, everything about this situation screamed danger and deception. But something about his words, his desperation, resonated with her. Her life had never been easy, and she had never shied away from challenges. Perhaps this was the ultimate test, one that would require more than just care and kindness. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do I need to do?" He placed the device in her hands, his grip firm but gentle. "You need to take this and the book to the underground chamber beneath the mansion. It's the only place where the power of the book can be unlocked. I can't do it alone. I need you by my side to make this work." The weight of the device in her hand felt surreal. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had come here to help someone in need, not to become a part of a battle that spanned centuries. But here she was, drawn into a dangerous game with no clear end in sight. "I'm with you," she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. He nodded, the smallest flicker of relief crossing his face. Good. We don't have much time. The consortium is closer than we think. Once they find out we're here, they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. She stood up, feeling the weight of the situation press down on her chest. This wasn't just about caring for a billionaire anymore. It was about survival, about fighting for something much larger than herself. The stakes had grown higher than she could have ever imagined. Together, they moved through the mansion's grand halls, the tension between them thick. As they descended into the underground chamber, she couldn't help but feel like they were descending into the very heart of the unknown. The door to the chamber loomed ahead, a heavy iron door that looked as though it had been there for centuries, guarding whatever secrets lay beyond. The billionaire turned to her, his expression serious. Once we open this door, there's no turning back. Are you ready? She took a deep breath, gripping the device tighter in her hand. I have no choice, she said quietly. With a final glance at her, the billionaire placed his hand on the door, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The door creaked open, the air heavy with the scent of damp stone and something older, ancient, almost otherworldly. As they stepped into the underground chamber, the light from a single hanging lantern barely illuminated the space. The walls were lined with shelves upon shelves of old books, scrolls, and relics that seemed to hold centuries of history. The room felt timeless, as if it had been waiting for something to happen for a very long time. The billionaire's face was pale, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting something, or someone, to emerge from the shadows. She could feel the tension in his body, the unease radiating off him in waves. For the first time, she realized just how much fear was controlling him. This wasn't about a simple book anymore, this was a matter of life and death. He moved toward the center of the room, where a large stone pedestal stood. On it was an empty, ancient-looking device, a hollow space that seemed to have been waiting for something to fit into it. The billionaire stopped in front of the pedestal and looked back at her. Place the key in the center, he instructed, his voice strained but firm. Her heart pounded as she walked up to him, the weight of the device in her hands suddenly feeling unbearable. She hesitated, unsure of what to expect. Was she really ready to face whatever secret lay within this chamber? Could she trust him completely? But as she placed the device into the pedestal, a sharp click echoed through the room. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated ever so slightly. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, the walls began to shift. Books and scrolls moved on their own, falling from shelves and swirling around the room. The very stones beneath their feet seemed to come alive. Before she could react, a sound, low and menacing, rumbled from deep within the chamber. It was a voice, though it wasn't human. It was older, deeper, and filled with an unnatural power. She turned to the billionaire, who was standing frozen, his expression a mixture of terror and awe. It's too late, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the noise. They've found us. She whipped around, her pulse quickening as shadows seemed to shift in the corner of the chamber. A figure slowly emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing, cloaked in a deep, tattered robe. His face was obscured, but she could feel his presence, like a cold wind sweeping through the room. Who are you? She demanded, her voice shaking but defiant. The figure didn't speak at first. Instead, he stepped forward, the air growing colder with each movement. The billionaire's hands clenched at his sides, his body tense, as though preparing for a battle he knew he couldn't win. I am the one who has been searching for this, the figure finally spoke, his voice a deep, gravelly whisper that seemed to echo in her bones. The book, the key, it's all mine. You should have never unlocked it. The billionaire's eyes widened. No. I'll never let you have it. The figure laughed, the sound like the rustling of dead leaves. You don't have a choice. This world is mine to control. And now, I will take what's rightfully mine. She felt the temperature in the room drop even further, the darkness pressing in on them. The power of the book, the power she didn't understand, was waking up, and with it came a force far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The billionaire stepped forward, his hands shaking. "You don't understand. You can't control it. Not without the one who holds the key." The figure's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the room fell deathly silent. "You're right," he said slowly. "But it doesn't matter anymore. The key is mine. You're nothing but a pawn in a much larger game." Without warning, he lunged forward, and in an instant, the room exploded in chaos. The wind howled as the books and relics flew through the air, swirling around them like a violent storm. The figure's hand extended, and the air around him shimmered with dark energy. She felt her body being pulled toward him, the force of his power overwhelming her. Her knees buckled, and for a moment, she thought she was going to collapse. But then, something unexpected happened. The device in her hand, still firmly gripped, began to glow. A bright light, so intense it was blinding, erupted from the pedestal. It was as though the book, the key, had recognized her. A surge of energy rushed through her veins, and she gasped as the room seemed to freeze. The dark figure staggered back, his face contorting in shock. "No. It's impossible." But she felt no fear. For the first time, she felt a sense of power. The energy of the book flowed through her, and she could see its secrets unfolding before her. The book was not just a map to power, it was the key to something greater. And now, she held it. With a sudden surge of determination, she raised her hand. The energy in the room shifted, the books and relics falling to the ground with a loud crash. The dark figure recoiled, his hands raised as if to shield himself from the light. The billionaire, still struggling to regain his footing, watched in awe. You're doing it. You're controlling it." "I don't know how," she whispered, but her voice was steady now. "But I won't let you have it. Not now. Not ever." The figure snarled, his body beginning to fade into the shadows. "This isn't over. You may have won for now, but the consortium will never stop. They'll come for you. They'll come for both of you." But his words were drowned out by the rising power of the book. The light enveloped him, and in an instant, he was gone, leaving nothing but silence and the lingering hum of energy in the air. She collapsed to her knees, the device still glowing in her hands. The light faded, leaving the chamber in darkness once more. The billionaire stood over her, his face a mix of relief and confusion. "It's not over," he said quietly. "But for now, we've won." The words echoed in her mind as she looked at him, her heart still racing. The battle had just begun. But for the first time, she knew she was ready to face it. With the book in her hands, she wasn't just a caretaker anymore. She was part of something much bigger, something that could change everything. The silence in the underground chamber was almost suffocating. The air was still thick with the remnants of the energy that had filled the room moments ago. She slowly stood up, her legs unsteady but her mind clearer than it had been since this whole ordeal began. The device in her hands felt heavier now, almost as if it had fused with her very soul. The billionaire, still wide-eyed and shaken, took a step toward her. You did it," he said, his voice thick with awe. "You saved us both." But she wasn't listening. Her mind was racing. The figure, the one who had claimed to be after the book for so long, was gone, but his words lingered in her mind. "The consortium will never stop. They'll come for you." Could she really believe that? Could they really continue to live like this, hiding in a mansion, waiting for the next attack? Her thoughts were clouded with doubt. The consortium had always been a shadow in the billionaire's life, but now that the power of the book had awakened, she knew they couldn't hide forever. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" He looked at her, his gaze filled with uncertainty, but also a hint of something else, a glimmer of hope. Now, we fight. We keep the book safe. We have the power to change everything. But we have to be smart. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. She hadn't signed up for any of this. She hadn't signed up for a fight against a shadowy organization that had controlled the world from behind the scenes for centuries. But here she was, holding the key to a power that could bring everything crashing down, or, if used right, could reshape the world for the better. "How do we fight them?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We don't just fight with force," the billionaire said, his voice growing more determined. "We fight with knowledge. We expose them. We show the world who they really are, what they've been doing all these years." She clenched the device tighter, a feeling of determination starting to build inside her. For the first time, she understood. The book wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a weapon, a tool to expose the truth. And the truth was something that the consortium couldn't allow to come to light. That's why they'd been hunting the billionaire for so long. That's why they'd been after this book. It wasn't just about power, it was about control. And now, the control was slipping away from them. "But it won't be easy," the billionaire warned, his voice low and serious. "They will come for you. They will come for both of us. They'll stop at nothing to get the book back. We have to be ready." She looked down at the device in her hand, then back at him. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said honestly. "I never asked for any of this. I just wanted a job, a chance to give my kids a better life. But now I'm in the middle of a war." His eyes softened, and he stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll face them together." She stared into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the same determination that had driven him all this time. And for the first time, she realized something: this wasn't just about the book. It wasn't even about the consortium. It was about something far more personal. It was about her. About what she was willing to fight for. About her family, her children, and the future she wanted to build for them. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about making sure that no one, no organization, no force in the world, could ever take away the chance for a better life. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady now, stronger than before. "I'll fight with you. I'll fight for the truth. I'll fight for my family." The billionaire gave a small, relieved smile. "I knew you would. Together, we can bring the consortium down. Together, we can change the world." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their decision settling around them. The future was uncertain, and the fight ahead would be long and difficult. But they had one thing the consortium didn't: hope. And with hope, they had a chance. As they made their way back out of the chamber, the door closing behind them, the mansion that had once felt like a prison now felt like a place of purpose. They had a mission. They had a reason to keep going. And as they walked into the unknown, one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. Life lesson: sometimes, you're thrust into situations you never asked for. The road ahead may seem impossible, the risks too high. But in those moments, you find strength you never knew you had. You fight not just for survival, but for something greater, something worth protecting. The power to change the world lies not in the hands of the powerful, but in the hearts of those willing to stand up and fight for what's right.